Alright, let's get right into it. Fallout New Vegas perks. One of the most famous videos on my channel. Way back when. So I thought I'd do it again since I've been playing the games. And this is a topic that I don't want to do an edited video on because if you try to edit it down and be as concise as possible and not kind of ramble, then everything is just, it's okay. It's good. You know. But we'll go over it. This tier list is mine. Follow me on Twitter. I retweet really funny stuff. So let's get right into this. Black Widow. These are in order. I made sure to order them in the level up order, so that they would be easy to sort of get through really quickly. And I have most of them memorized, but I'll need to look up some of them because I don't know what the pictures are. Some of them I never take because they're bad. The assumptions will be that you're playing on very hard, so this isn't easy where you can just use any weapon and win. You at least need perks to help make any weapon viable, but any weapon is still viable. Hardcore, so we're assuming that you have ammo weight, survival needs, and limbs can't be healed with stim packs. What else does hardcore change? I think that's it, right? Companions also die, which is supposed to make it harder, but I don't think anyone actually cares. But I think those are all the hardcore vanilla changes, and then we'll be assuming that you've got all the DLC. So you've got level 50 Gunrunner's Arsenal weapons from the start, and GRA weapons have been introduced, along with all the perks related to all the 4 big DLCs. So Black Widow, amazing level 2 perk. Black Widow is the exact same as Confirmed Bachelor, with the only difference being that if you try to go to the strip at level 1, you can kill Benny for free. This is, like, completely worthless if you have courier stash as an advantage, but, like, I don't know, maybe you're playing with Jay Sawyer or something, you know? There's a slight advantage to having the ability to kill Benny off the bat. Not much advantage, but it's there. Either way though, Black Widow and Confirmed Bachelor, so being straight and gay, for women and men, respectively, is better than being into women. Caesar's Legion is 100% men. A vast majority of NCR troopers also seem to be men. The Brotherhood is predominantly men, and then Powder Gangers are entirely men. This is a level 2 perk, so you'll get it within Goodsprings. You won't have to leave town to get it if you don't want to, and if you rush the strip, obviously, you're playing in a weird way where you already know how to manipulate everything, so they're both amazing perks. Level 2, so you have full game impact on them. They are pretty good in speech. I mean, if you rush the strip, you have enough speech for the game, but if you don't, they can get you through a lot of checks early on that you might not have. They have some pretty cool perks. I believe gay men can use this to get Major Knight to freely repair their items for them either one time or infinitely. I believe it's bugged, so in vanilla you get a free repair one time, but hey man, that's not worthless. Let's say you're playing the intended route and you kill that Nightkin and Novak that has the minigun, and then you go to Major Knight and hit on him, repair that minigun. That's like 5,000 caps, you know? You time it right with the right items and you can get some major bank off that. But yeah, just in general, the damage bonus is nice. And I mean, in vanilla, what else are you picking? Being into women is worse. Remember, boys, this is why the Legion is on top. Do not be attracted to women. It's very bad. Significantly less opponents are female. Really, the only group of people that I think have like a very distinctly even gender split are the Fiends that you'll actually be fighting. Fiends and like early gangs like the Vipers and Jackals. So I suppose early on this has some value, but it's more so for role playing. If you want to be a gay or bisexual woman, then obviously take Churches La Femme. I'm not actually sure if that's how you pronounce it. It's like Churche La Femme or something. You're supposed to put emphasis on it. But I just say like Church's chicken. I want to say that being the straight version of your gender is always better. As in, being a woman that's into men and being a man that's into women has more checks, which would make sense. But I also know that Confirmed Bachelor, for instance, can help you skip the quest with Manny in the main quest. But that doesn't matter, because there's like 3 ways to skip that quest. Pronounce Circe La Femme. That's interesting. Wait, Circe? I'm never gonna call it that. I'm gonna call it Churche. But I suppose these 4 perks also have a lot of utility for people who just try the game for the first time, right? These perks have a lot more beginner value out of them, too. Because I think someone that plays the game the first time would probably not understand that if they just invest into speech, they're completely set. And they would probably have a more general, even starting build. So these perks would probably be more helpful for that, too. Which I guess we should consider. Friend of the Night is bad. So Friend of the Night just puts a blue color filter on everything when it's nighttime. It doesn't give you any statistical bonuses. It doesn't make you like actually have better VATS chance, or it doesn't up your perception for like the compass. It doesn't do any of that, right? Now, there are chems in the game that do this function. Cat Eye. And there's even DLC items that you can get, I think, without fighting anything. I'm pretty sure the Riot gear has a built-in Night Eye goggle that you don't need to fight anything to buy from the Divide. So there's no actual necessary reason to get Friend of the Night that I can think of, unless you just really like the night color. Which is completely valid, but yeah, no, it doesn't help you see either, because see, when you take Night Eye and, for instance, Morrowind, for instance, you activate Night Eye and the gamma actually changes in the game. You can see better, but in this game the gamma doesn't actually go up at all. You literally just can't see any better. It's just color filtered. So yeah, Friend of the Night is actually worthless. And it's like a really disorienting shade of blue, too. It makes you feel like you're in old world blues. There's the difficulty with the C pronunciation. In English it's Caesar, but in Latin it's Kaiser. Always. True to Kaiser. This is Heave Ho. I believe the requirements... Oh yeah, also Friend of the Night has like a perception requirement. But it doesn't matter because it's bad. Heave Ho has a strength requirement of, I believe, 5 and an explosives requirement of 30. Yeah. It just makes it so that thrown weapons, dynamite, grenades, I think mines, even, hilariously enough, and throwing spears, throwing knives, hatchets. They, tomahawks, they get thrown farther. Now, this is a really good perk if you like grenades specifically. But if you like all the other throwing weapons, it won't matter much. Because there really aren't any thrown weapons in the game except for grenades. So, this is, I would say, more so useful for counteracting the trait for loose cannon than actually making grenades significantly better. Because if you pick Loose Cannon and Heave Ho, you are slightly plus all around, and I think you have an AP reduction in bats. But in general, I've never vibed with the thrown weapons, like the grenades. The timing feels really off to me. I'm sure that's entirely like both a me and a skill issue. But I've never gotten much use out of this perk, even on builds where thrown grenades would have been the perfect complement. Oh, wait. I will be right back. We back? I'll have to cut that out if I re-upload this. We were on Heave Ho, right? Heave Ho is just decent, but I would say it's mostly for counteracting Loose Cannon rather than just being that great on its own. I'm not entirely sure though, obviously. Let's get that off there. But in general, thrown weapons just aren't really that great. I mean, grenades are like... The problem is there's no Fallout 4 button to toggle an equipable grenade, which means you have to switch to them anyways. And I mean, even if you use your hotkeys to have, like, for instance, on down grenade, so that you always can just hotkey to it and throw it, at that point, there's not much difference between actually just using, like, a grenade rifle, which in general is pretty comparable, but it can be aimed easier. And grenades and grenade rifles are both affected by all of the same perks. Believe it or not, Loose Cannon and Heave Ho actually do affect the grenade rifle, which is really weird. So I don't really see much reason to use thrown weapons in New Vegas at all. But if you do want to, this is like the only perk that specifically affects it, so it can't be that bad. Really the downside of it is that it's a level 2 perk. And level 2 perks have like the stiffest competition in vanilla. Because a lot of weirdly good perks are available at level 2 and 4, 6, like early on. Hunter, 75% crit damage to animals. I believe this one doesn't have any requirements. However, what animals are you fighting? Bighorners? They're easy. Night Stalkers are abominations. Cazadors are insects. Deathclaws are abominations. Super Mutants, I believe, are abominations. Actually, Super Mutants are their own thing. Ghouls are actually counted as humanoids for a lot of purposes. Non-feral ghouls. I believe the marked men are affected by Black Widow. So, what are you using this for? It's like maybe Yao Huai? But I don't think it's worth it. Yao Guai aren't very heavily armored. They're not very strong. They're in one specific part of the game that you determine when you go to. Hunter is pretty mid. But if your goal is to create a character that can do the most damage, I guess this is a path to it for whatever you're doing. Knight in Shining Armor. It has a weirdly high requirement of, I think, Science 70 and a certain intelligence. But it is bugged. It does not work. Yeah, repair 20, science 70. But it's bugged and it doesn't work. I believe even this page says it. Yeah, not implemented. It does not function at all. The effect, even if it did work, is rather bad. It's specifically just a little bit of DT against energy weapons. And it's like, that is horrible. If you're wearing specifically metallic armor. Now, the glasses part of this is pretty good. The Lucky Shades are like one of the strongest items in the game, but naturally, if you're in metal armor, you're good. If you're in metal armor, you're heavy enough. You're tanky enough. And in power armor, it's overkill. This is specifically useful if you want to wear like sunglasses and like Joshua Graham's armor. So you're like a little bit frail. But even at that, it's not worth it ever. Tense training is amazing. Just a free special point. So here's the thing. In Vanilla New Vegas, charisma is worthless. Now you can argue about it, but for the points of building your character, you don't need to raise charisma above 1 if you're building your character at the vigor tester, right? There are practical effects to temporarily raising charisma, but in terms of character building, there's no reason to raise it above 5 other than perks. And it's 2 perks that are both going to go into the bad territory, okay? So, in Vanilla New Vegas, you lower charisma from 5 to 1, raise endurance from 5 to 9, you can have all implants. So you're looking at a starting special of 6 for everything but endurance and charisma, with endurance being at 10. That's effectively how you look at your character in Vanilla, because in Vanilla, the special balance is broken, right? So you look at every skill you have, and that's 6, except for endurance, which is higher, and charisma, which is lower. And 6 is pretty much good enough to do generally everything you want in the game. But that doesn't mean more points is bad. Intelligence gives you skill points, which with all 50 DLC is unnecessary, but it speeds up and helps the earlier part of the game, right? More luck is always better for crits. More agility means more action points. More strength means more carry weight. And more perception is lockpick skill. So just because you have enough special for like your specialized perks and build early on, doesn't mean getting a special point is not good. And if you are one of those people who cares about charisma and tries to defend it really hard, you can just take intense training and then boom, there you go. It's a good perk. If you use mods that make... I'll mention the mods that I use as I go through this. But if you use mods that actually make all of the special stats equally useful, intense training actually jumps up. It's even better than these two. But I'd say in vanilla it's worse. For instance, I use a mod that makes it so that perception affects VATS accuracy and charisma affects companion limit. And with that, you can't really dump any special skills. So you actually are a little bit strapped for how to build your character. Because you actually have to just use the 5 points you're given. And it leads to more interesting dynamic builds. Where intense training is actually a really good perk. But this isn't. This is vanilla. Junk rounds is bad. The ammo you make from it is really inefficient. It's multiple 10s in scrap metal. And it's really bad ammo that like wears down your weapons faster, does less damage, harder to acquire than just vanilla rounds because you're never strapped for money in this game ever. And the argument for this is to like make high grade weapon ammo early, but then how are you acquiring the weapon early too? And if you can acquire the weapon early, you can acquire the ammo. There's no scenario for junk rounds. It's not useful for new players because they won't manage their inventory well enough to carry around all that scrap metal and tins. And it's not useful for people who know how to rush the game, so it's just useless. It's worse than Friend of the Night. Light Touch. Crits are really good. It requires an agility of 6 and a repair of 45. It's available at level 2. This is possible to get in vanilla, but you have to very specially invest into intelligence and luck and tag repair. The advantage of Light Touch is that you build your character in Goodsprings, and then when you get to an invisible wall around Goodsprings, the dead money perks do not disappear from your character screen. They weren't coded to be removed because they were added with DLC. So if you take Light Touch, it is literally completely free. I mean, in that respect, it's literally perfect because it doesn't consume a perk slot. It's like completely free. It only works in light armor, and it gives you a +5 crit chance, and your enemies suffer -25% crit chance, and both of those effects are pretty strong. Less so the enemy crit chance, because enemies don't really seem to crit very much, but there's a lot of weapons that once you get Light Touch and you stack it with all the other crit stuff, you can get guaranteed crits. It's incredibly powerful and completely free, because you can just build your character to have it in the Goodsprings tutorial and then take it when you leave. If you consider it outside of that exploitability, then maybe I'd put it in Almost Perfect. But I don't know. This is Old World Gourmet, which requires, I think, just a survival of 45. Endurance 6, survival 45. It makes scotch, wine, and vodka restore health, and it makes all junk foods heal you for, I think, 50% more. And it reduces your addiction chance by 25%. That's the key one, is it reduces your addiction chance, which is kind of cool. All of those effects are very negligible. This is a dead money perk, so the thought process is like, oh, I'll take it before I go to dead money. But it doesn't, you don't need to. The addiction chance is nice. I believe with this, and I want to say the Old World Blues body part perks, you can get to like 75% resistance, which is pretty cool. But in general, the downsides of addiction are, again, very minor. They can be ignored by taking more of the drug, so as long as it's not turbo, you can probably just take another and then go to a doctor. I mean, there's no... And that you can just go to a doctor. There's also the fact that Fixer is permanent. It says temporary, but it is permanent. It will get rid of the addiction. So managing your addictions just isn't really that valuable. In vanilla hardcore, alcohol makes you thirstier, so you don't want to drink that ever. And then your junk foods also give you rads, so you just start avoiding them over things like gecko steak or rad scorpion casserole that you can get in much bigger numbers anyways, and that heal you for more food and health by default. It's not very useful all around, but the addiction thing is kind of nice. Your endurance affects your addiction chance, which means it would be cool if it didn't have an endurance requirement. If you dumped your endurance and you had a high addiction chance, you could take this to counteract it, but you can't do that because of the endurance requirement. So it's a bit unfortunate. Rapid reload is amazing. Agility 5, gun sturdy. You can get this very easily at level 2. It makes all builds better, and specifically it makes lever action rifles, including shotguns, and individual chamber revolvers, weapons like pew pew, the grenade rifle, all explosive weapons pretty much, big guns, and the hollow rifle. It makes all of them significantly better because they're all fire and then reload. Or their reload animations are just extremely long in general. It's extremely minimal investment. Basically, tag a skill and leave your agility alone, and you can have it. So, like, no requirements. I would never recommend you dump agility in general, just because a lot of the best perks in the game are that, and VATS is that, and VATS is still really strong, but the downside is that you don't need this, because normally your agility already affects your reload speed, just not to as much of an extent as rapid reload. An agility of 10 is still faster than an agility of 5, but yeah, you don't really need this for something like, I don't know, like a sniper rifle, a hunting rifle, for instance, but for things like the lever action shotgun, dinner bell, pew pew, it's really good. It does not affect recharge your weapons though, so just be careful about that. Retention is bad. It makes skill magazines last 3 times as long, but skill magazines already last forever while you're performing skill checks. So if you take... To get Benny alone, you need a speech skill of 60. Before you talk to him, read the magazine, and either at 50 or 40, you know, for comprehension. And just talk to him. No matter how long you take in the dialogue box, the timer won't tick down. So you're fine, obviously. So retention has exactly the use for helping you in combat scenarios, but getting plus 10 guns is probably not going to win you a battle, like, ever. And all of the scenarios I can think of that are like skill checks that are manual activation, a magazine lasts long enough. Like, you think, okay, what about the Nellis solar arrays, right? Well, there's a few of them, so what if you take one and the magazine runs out? And it's like, they're right there. They're all next to each other. All the medical patients are all next to each other. Like at Camp Forlorn Hope, Nellis, they're right next to each other. There's no real scenario where you need retention because of the way the game mechanics work. Now, maybe in like Fallout 4, retention would be okay if there were magazines in that game, but yeah, there's no actual value to retention, unfortunately. I love the fucking big brain Fallout kid. Vault Boy. Swift Learner. Swift Learner is mid. It just makes you level up faster. Now, it's 10% per rank, and it has an intelligence requirement of, I believe, 4 or 5. Doesn't matter. Because you'll get 5 on 90% of builds for Pack Rat. But leveling up faster is not bad. People kind of over-hate experience perks. And I think it's because you don't need to get to level 50 to be powerful. Realistically, your build is set by about 20 to 30, depending on how optimized you are. Most of my builds are pretty much at their power threshold at about 20, and they just need better gear. But, I mean, if you're playing in vanilla and you want to get to 50, and you don't want to do the DLC, you're going to need experience perks to get there. There is not enough experience in the Mojave to get to level 50, unless you start explicitly, like, farming experience. And I dislike the DLC, personally. I would never want to play the DLC on a build that has gone through the base game. It's one or the other for me. So for me, you know, experience perks have, like, this value of, like, oh, if I'm going to play in the vanilla, get all the way to level 50, then yeah, I'll take Swift Learner. I think really the big problem with Swift Learner is that it has 3 ranks. If it was one perk that was 30%, this would be a no-brainer. This would be like an every build perk. But taking 3 perk slots for 30% experience is dog water. But just the first rank is like, okay. Cannibal is unnecessary. There's enough food. But for role-playing, it's really good. The Meat of Champions perk that you can get from eating the King, Mr. House, Kimball, and Caesar is kind of bad, and it gives you temporary effects. I personally don't like managing temporary effects, and New Vegas gives you more than enough opportunities to just get permanent effects. So I don't really see a strong need to micromanage temporary effects in this game. Chems are already sort of that avenue, and they're plenty strong without Meat of Champions. Comprehension. I guess Cannibal, and especially Swift Learner, have value for people that are getting into the game. Comprehension is very specifically, it gives you need an intelligence of 5, and it gives you 1 extra skill point when you read skill books, which that's kind of irrelevant. It's basically an extra skill book for every skill. What's really significant about it is that it doubles the power of magazines. So I think it boosts the crit chance from +5 to +10 on True Police Stories, and it makes all the skill bonuses from 10 to 20. That's crazy. That actually leads to a lot of warping. If you're playing the intended way, Comprehension has an insane amount of value. You run into like an average lock at 25 lockpick skill, like take a Mentats, drink an absinthe, read a locksmith reader, and you can open that lock now. And that's kind of nuts. The actual power of that is not necessarily so useful early on, but for micromanaging your build and not investing lockpick skill until you need to, you can use this to, like, for instance, go get Lucky from the Viking Advanced Casino, or the Bison Steve Casino, really quickly to go get the Gobi campaign rifle once you hit 75 lockpick. It has its uses. Less so for, like, rushing the strip. If you go that route, you don't need this really, because you get enough experience from Benny to just raise your skills, but still not bad. Still useful on all characters. And I mean, if you take this, then I could actually kind of see retention having an argument. Because then if you're raising, like, your explosives by 20, that's actually a significant amount of number change. Maybe enough to, like, change a battle. Even then, still probably not, but hey, trying to come up with every argument possible, right? Educated is like Swift Learner, but sort of inverse. It's significantly less useful because of the level cap raise. When New Vegas was released, it had a level cap of 30, which meant that maximizing your skill points was absolutely essential. And for better or worse, the DLC raises the level cap to 50. And even with an intelligence of 1, any character can max all their skills with that much levels. So, in vanilla, it was the situation where you wanted to take as many skill point raising things as possible to max out all of your skills except for basically combat skills. But now, it's not really necessary. This also has an intelligence requirement of 4, I believe. It doesn't matter. It's just not useful. It's kind of noticeable early on, I suppose. But it's just the long game versus the immediate game. The difference between this and Swift Learner is that I think Swift Learner will get you levels that you wouldn't have gotten without it. That's kind of the difference, right? But with Educated, you will have gotten those skill points eventually. You can almost view it as like Swift Learner is just Educated plus, because you also get perks from those levels, not just the skill points, right? It's kind of crazy. But in a weird way, with all the DLC, Swift Learner is actually better than Educated. The Educated is like 2 points per level. They nerfed it from Fallout 3. So 2 times 30 is like 60. Right? So it's 60 points for free. But at the same time, the additional points of 20 levels, even if it's just 10 experience, is 200. Like, even if you were at Intelligence 1 and you were only getting 10 to 11 points, that's 200 versus 60. Even if you stretch Educated to level 50, that's 200 versus 100. And like I've played New Vegas enough to know that the level cap will basically you'll stop scaling at about the mid 30s if you just stick in the Mojave. So like to actually get those higher levels, you would need some experience boosting. There's better perks for it, but I think Swift Learner is better than Educated in vanilla. Entomologist is just flat damage bonus to insects. It's better than Hunter in the effect, but what's the requirement? Intelligence 4, Survival 45. Kind of strict requirements. Survival, at least. But I guess you'll get it for Travel Light and whatever else, so it's not that bad. The effect is stronger, though. Just flat out bonus damage to insects, even if it's not crit damage, or not as high number. The fact that it's every shot means that it's more applicable to all builds. And I would say that hitting insects is a lot better than hitting animals. So you have to deal with rad scorpions, which are really tanky. You'll also need to deal with cazadors. That's the big one. And cazadors are frail, but more damage is always nice. This is either a level 2 or level 4 perk. Level 4 from the looks of it, because the last section was alphabetized, and Rad Child is there, which is level 4. So, yeah, this is perfectly reasonable. If you're gonna try to rush the strip through the cazadors or through the Rad Scorpions, this might be worth it. You know, if you're trying to play more honestly, you're not trying to cheese, you know? That's a valid way to do it. Other than those two enemies, though, what insects do you fight? That's basically it, yeah. It's mid. Rad Child. Rad Child is a perk that I have had an immense come around to. It's the strongest perk that we've seen so far in the tier list. Survival 70. Regenerate 2 HP per second per 200 rads accumulated. Now, that sounds very, very bad at a first glance. But why don't we look at New Vegas Rads? Why don't we see what all the stages of radiation actually do? -1 endurance, -1 agility, you lose some action points, and -1 strength. So you probably don't want to go to those levels. So, but even if you do, right, that's some VATs and that's some carry weight. In vanilla, the carry weight penalty is 20 pounds. It's not that significant. And in vanilla, I'm also fairly certain that's not that many action points. So you take it at these rates, and if it's 2 per 200, then that means this is 2, 4, 6, and 8. You're regenerating basically about 10 HP a second. That's fucking ridiculous. A very large player health pool to start with is like 300. So like what, 8 times 10 is 80? That's like an insane amount of your health you're getting back just passively. And then you combine that with effects like the Monocyte Breeder, which isn't normally that strong, but when you start combining it with Rad Child, that's pretty crazy. And then another perk that we sort of need to break order to talk about why this is so strong is a perk introduced in Old World Blues called Atomic, which has an endurance requirement of 6, and in irradiated areas you move faster and you attack faster, that's whatever. But with excess rad levels, your AP regen scales from 1.1 times to 1.5 times normal. So you think about VATs, which is already one of the strongest states to be in for the game because you're doing bonus crit chance, which in turn is bonus damage, right? VATs also makes you tankier. Not to a significant degree, but you live hits you wouldn't have inside of VATs. So you combine the AP regen from Atomic with the HP regen from Radchild, and you're basically a perpetual VATS machine. And when you combine that with crits, which are like the craziest playstyle in the game, Radchild more than makes up for all of the radiation downsides. 20 pounds and a few AP is nothing. Really, the biggest downside of trying to do the rads into the points where you lose strength is just weapon requirements, which another perk kind of helps with. On top of that, with 70 survival, you can just chug beer, like infinitely. There's more than enough beer and alcohol in the game to just stay drunk long enough that you never deal with the downsides of Radchild. The radiation downsides. And even if you have that much of a problem with the agility, you can, I believe, take Coyote Tobacco Chew if you're in combat to counteract some of the agility. But I think other than that, you're stuck with the Riot Gear, which boosts agility by +1, which isn't that bad. You can get that at any level. So if you, by some miracle, actually get Radchild at level 4, you can go get the Riot Gear from Lonesome Road, and boom, you know, you barely got any downsides. This just makes radiated areas more difficult, which is good, because if, you know, you're likely not going to them quickly, so you'll have the rad gear built up, so it's kind of interesting. It's very fun. Run and gun. So for people that hate VATS, this is like essential, but obviously it's not necessary because VATS is cracked. It just makes it so that moving with a one-handed weapon, you're still as accurate as you would be standing still. Very powerful if you're going to use autos that have a lot of sway. Otherwise, it's not that useful. But I've used it on a ton of builds where I've used like Little Devil. Weapons like Little Devil, the Sleepy Time, Weathered 10 mil, that gun. You can feel it, but you can feel it. It should be in no weaknesses because it's very, very impactful. The requirement is energy weapons or guns of 45. Which, that's not that intensive, you know? Just raise your weapon skill over time and you'll get it. Travel Light. Top tier perk. Level 4 as a survival requirement of 45. It's significantly... I think it's helped by perks like Radchild that require survival anyways, so you don't feel like you're wasting it. And it's also not quite as much of a drawback as I think people think it is. So for one, light armor builds are the strongest in the game because of crits and light touch and things like Joshua Graham's armor and Ulysses' armor. But even on top of that, if you're doing a heavy armor build, this is still a good perk because you wear heavy armor, you move like a fucking slug when you're fighting, and then when you fast travel back to a town, just take the power armor off and walk around. Like, being naked counts for travel light, so you don't have to carry around like a different set of clothing. You just take off the heavy armor and you move quicker. And 10% is, in New Vegas' game balance, enough to actually alter some things. Like, when you're trying to run past scorpions, I believe travel light makes you quick enough to outrun giant rad scorpions. Which is kind of important if you want to try going the not the Prim Pass, the Rad Scorpion Gulch way to get to the strip. Kind of helpful for getting past the Cazadors, if you just want to run past them and take any damage you take with the anti-venom from Doc Mitchell's. And just for moment-to-moment gameplay, moving quicker is always better. I personally advocate for sprint mods and agility speed modifiers, but you know, this is like one of the few avenues for speed in New Vegas. You can't rank it any lower than very good because of that. Bloody Mess. It's very epic. I like punching some guy and seeing him turn into Hamburger Helper. 5% bonus damage is also nice. Doesn't sound that big, but everything stacks up. Demolition Expert. This one is what, 10% per 3 ranks, and it has an explosives requirement of 50. %, 3 ranks. So you do like an extra half damage for your explosives. See, this is one of those things where it's like, that sounds crazy compared to something like Bloody Mess, right? But it's also for explosives, which are already like strong enough. I mean, like, yeah, if you're doing an explosives build, you're going to take it, but how good is that compared to, like, say, Center of Mass, right, in one perk? How do each individual ranks of Demolition Expert compare to Center of Mass? Or Sniper, because that'll double your damage because you're aiming for the head, right? And it's like, is that really as impactful on an explosives build as... Is each rank as impactful on an explosives build as, like, Sniper, Center of Mass, better criticals in one perk slot on those builds? It's like, probably not. Realistically. Demolition Expert is one of those perks where it would be more useful if you wanted to do damage with explosives, but you didn't want to raise explosives. But it's got a steep enough requirement that that's not how you're ever going to take it. You know, you'll never take Demolition Expert if you're only going to use, like, grenades to complement, like, a grunt build. So it's like, at that point, why even bother? Because you're already going to get your explosives to 50, which is a significant damage bonus. Compared to, like, leaving it at, like, 20 or so and just taking it at that level, right? So this is one where the explosives requirement on it kind of actually makes it worse. Which is weird because you're technically doing more damage, but the perk is less versatile because it has that requirement. And I would actually value things like splash damage and hit the deck over this for explosives. It is flat damage, which means that it's better by default than all of these. Because it affects everything, not just women or bugs or animals. The 3 genders. Ferocious Loyalty, bad. It has a high charisma requirement. It's either a charisma requirement of 5 or 6. I don't care to remember, because it's higher than 1. And whenever you fall below 50% health, your companions gain... The description just says significantly more. I want to know what the number is. 50 DR. So they take half damage. That is not insignificant, but... your companions are fucking jacked. If you had 5 charisma, your companions would be yoked out to the point where they don't need that ever. This has some potential synergy with like a hot-blooded build. But no, not really. Because if you're hot-blooded, you're strong enough you don't need your companions. So, level 6 also means that you've already done the strip, if you're rushing the strip, and if you haven't, you don't have your strong companions yet, because you're probably around Mojave Outpost, maybe about to head towards Nipton, and it's like, dude, what, are you trying to yoke up Eddie? What are you doing? It's a perk that doesn't have any function and has a requirement that's too intense. If this had no charisma requirement and the effect was that your companions did 50% damage instead of got tankier, this would be okay. But it's not even that. Fortune Finder, money's irrelevant in New Vegas. This also has a luck requirement. But you know, if you enjoy moment-to-moment gameplay and you don't like doing things like rushing the strip and gambling, sure. It's not quite as good as the Fallout 4 one, though. I actually adore the Fallout 4 one. I try to get it a lot so that when I kill enemies, they burst into ball caps. Just for the spectacle. But you can't do that in this game, so... bit sad. Gunslinger. This requires, I believe, guns or energy weapons to be a certain... Actually, this one might have no requirement. 25% accuracy and VATS increase. Yeah. When you combine this with things like concentrated fire and like pistols that have high VATS counts, this gets crazy. But I mean, it's just self-explanatory. It's VATS accuracy. It's always good. I'd say it's less impactful on a VATS build compared to run and gun is for a non-VATS build. What is this? Level 6? Gunslinger, so GHI. This would be hand loader, right? Which has a repair requirement of 70. So this one kind of, I didn't really get it for a while until I actually did the math one time, and then I was like, oh hey, I was actually being really stupid. So look at some of these calculations, right? When you do hollow point rounds in the game, it multiplies your opponent's DT and buffs your damage. So this is based off of a real life gun thing that I don't really understand because I'm not like a gun nut. But essentially hollow points like splinter inside of a person to do more damage. And they represent that by making them not very strong against armor, right? The point is to create that DT versus DR system where you want... Where's a good example of 308. Look at this. Just raw damage. No, that's a bad example. What about... Here we go, 44. Your damage isn't raised as significantly as like the hollow point, but the DT is cut. So you would load that 44 into something like I believe a brush gun, and you would use that to penetrate armor, whereas you would use the 10mm JHP in something like a 10mm that already does low damage to do something against like a Nightkin that doesn't have armor. That's just a health tank. That's an example Jay Sawyer used in one of his armor clash video. But the balance breaks once you realize that opponents in New Vegas just don't have armor. The highest armor enemy you're gonna fight that matters are like Deathclaws, right? Characteristics. Damage threshold 15. So you look at 10mm JHP hand load. You multiply the damage by 1.65, right? This is kind of a bad example. What's a different one? Because that's for automatics. Here we go. 12mm. So you look at Little Devil. Little D. You just look at the raw attack stat, right? 53.1. So 53.1 minus 15. I just use the base one, right? 45. 30 damage. Okay. And then you look at... Okay, now hold on. Now wait a minute. You do the damage up, but the DT stays the same. So it ends up being that because of the way all of the different damage multipliers work on weapons, by the time the 1.65 is done being added to bonuses like your crit modifier, Bloody Mess, maybe your Karma perk, and there's a few other perks that affect damage that I'm forgetting, like Black Widow. By the time you get all of those sorted out, the damage is more than 2 times. So even though the Deathclaw now has 30 DT, you're doing a lot more than 90 damage. So it's really hard to explain. I don't know that I did a good job. But essentially, hand loader is cracked. Other than specifically automatic weapons, pretty much everything wants its hand loader equivalent. Even things that increase enemy DT. Because keep in mind that what I just showed you with the Deathclaw, the only enemies that wear more DT, really, than a Deathclaw are like hit squads from factions, the Brotherhood, and Rad Scorpions. Anytime you're fighting like a Cazador, or like Geckos, or like normal foot soldiers, you're fighting with less DT than that Deathclaw had. So your damage is punching through more of their armor. Handloader is really good. Like, really, really good. And unless you're with the Legion... No, unless you're an independent Vegas character who pissed off the Great Khans and the NCR, ammo is never an issue. So Handloader is busted. It's banana balls. And what makes it specifically more powerful for a guns character as compared to Vigilant Recycler, which is also a level 6 perk, is that Vigilant Recycler isn't necessary. Optimized ammo isn't really better than max charge. It's only better depending on who you want as a companion. Because if you're not willing to just pick Raoul, then yeah, you might want to do optimized. But that's basically it. Handloader is actually necessary to craft the best ammo. Whereas you don't need Vigilant Recycler to do max charge. So Handloader has that also. It's more necessary as a perk than just being an additional. Lead Belly's bad. Has an endurance and survival requirement and reduces radiation when you eat or drink. Purified water is so little of a problem that Jay Sawyer gives the option to make some purified water dirty. Just so that there's more reason to actually drink it. You start off in Good Springs with Good Springs Source. You can fast travel there at any point in the game and drink, and then fast travel back. You have the Vault 13 Canteen, which also slows your rate of dehydration. There's no actual merit to this. So. Mad Bomber. Mad Bomber is probably more important to an explosives build than HEFO. It unlocks several recipes at workbenches, the most important of which is the Microfusion Cluster and the Microfusion Grenade. You can turn all those energy cells and electron charge packs and microfusion cells into grenades, which do more damage than I believe a plasma grenade. And the microfusion clusters, which are goofy. They're very fun. However, what's the requirement here? The old world blues, right? No, it's Gunrunner's Arsenal. Repair 45, explosives 45. Not very intensive at all. If you're an explosives character anyways. You'll want this for jury rigging, and then you'll want explosives. It gives you much more reliable access to grenades than even like the weapon vendors. I don't remember if it gives you access to any crazy ammo for things like grenade rifles, but it's not important. Microfusion grenades are crazy. Shotgun Surgeon has a guns requirement of, I believe, 45. It's a level 6 perk, and it allows you to ignore DT with shotguns. Shotguns have a low base damage spread over multiple pellets, so this is really powerful. It's minus 10 DT. So, using the Deathclaw, right, as the golden rule, because it's like a heavily DT opponent that's like the toughest you'll fight, really. You're looking at, what, minus 10 DT, so it means your shotgun only has to punch through 5 DT on a Deathclaw. If you combine that with, like, a Magnum round, that I believe is minus 2 DT, you only have to hit through 3 DT, and a lot of shotguns can hit over 3 damage per pellet, which effectively means you're doing plus damage on a Deathclaw. When you combine that with the other effects shotguns have in the game, it's crazy. You don't even need VATs for a build like shotguns. I would say, however, that this is much more necessary to a shotgun build than, for instance, those ones. Yeah. The Professional has a sneak requirement of 70, level 6, and it boosts your revolvers and pistols sneak critical damage by 20%. Did I get it right? See. It's flat damage. Stealth builds are the strongest in the game, whether you're using VATS or not. And some of the weapons it affects are cracked. This affects things like the MF Hyperbreeder Alpha. This would affect like the 12 7mm pistol, I believe. I don't think Little Devil, because it was added by GRA, but it would still affect at least the 12mm, which can be silenced. Which is crazy. That's a crazy build to use the 12mm with the silencer in this perk. The weathered 10mm that you start with is affected by this. Maria's affected by this. I believe Sleepy Time is affected by this. The weathered 10mm, I don't know if it can be silenced in vanilla. I think it causes issues. But it just in general. I believe even... Does this affect revolvers too? Revolvers, pistols. So you won't stay hidden for very long if you use like a Ranger Sequoia, but that first damage is going to one-shot anything. Especially if you start adding in things like Black Widow and Bloody Mess, you know? You know, it's all started, it all adds up. 20% turns into 35. It's crazy. It's the least probably useful perk here though, because it requires unspecifically using guns or energy weapons and stealth. Toughness is mid. It has a very strong tangible effect, but it's not useful. It's not efficient. It has 2 ranks, I believe an endurance requirement of 5, and what it does is it gives you 3 DT a rank. Now, in the vanilla game, you're kind of limited to your tankiness, and you want to do a light armor build for crits, so it sounds like, well, if you want to do a light armor build, tank toughness, and then you're tankier, but this doesn't change many interactions. Like, when you consider the power some of these perks have, 3DT is not saving you from a headshot. Did I get the requirement right? Endurance 5, yeah, 2 ranks. It also has an endurance requirement, so if you... That's another thing to keep in mind, is a lot of perks that sound like they have potential if you build a certain way, like, let's say that you ignore the raising endurance so that all your skills start higher and you just dump your endurance, right? Well, with your lower health, maybe that DT has more impact, right? But then you can't take it with lower health. That's something to really consider with some of these. It's like Demolition Expert in that regard, but I'd say it's more generally useful. And more people can take this, so I'll put it higher. Some of these that you wish you could take with low requirements that would make them more useful have strict requirements. This is, I think, Vigilant Recycler, which is... It's like strictly a tier lower than Handloader, because the ammo is useful early on, but not compared to later on. It does allow you to efficiently recycle your rounds, though, which is better. Commando, it's Gunslinger for rifles, but which I would say are generally better. If you want to snipe with them, this helps you with that. And then if you want to use an automatic, I'd say the rifles tend to be better. The Assault Carbine, well, not the Marksman, the Bozar, it's pretty cool. I don't actually know if it's affected by this, but Bozar is very, very epic. What other automatics are there? Maybe just those two, but you know they're very good. The Assault Carbine is like an in-game weapon, right? Even though a lot of random schmucks have it, if you build for it, it's incredibly impactful in the end of the game. This is also very useful for things like the hunting rifle, like Paciencia, or I think Paciencia. I'm not actually sure how to say it. The Gobi campaign, Christine COS. You know, there are things that are good for this. I'd say in general the rifles in the game are better than the pistols. I prefer the pistols and revolvers, but I'd say in general the rifles are better. Things like the Riot shotgun are pretty insane. Cowboy has a gun skill 45 and I think a melee of... No, I think it's a guns of 30 and a melee of 45. And it boosts certain revolvers. It boosts revolvers, lever action rifles, combat knives, and dynamite by 25%. This is like an RP build, but it can stack with certain weapons. For instance, this weapon makes Medicine Stick one of the strongest weapons in the game. The Ranger Sequoia can hit some of the highest numbers in the game. You can easily one-shot death calls with it. If you stack this with like Professional, Hunter, Bloody Mess, and all your better criticals and all that. And it's one of the few things that overlaps with Grunt, which makes Chance's Knife really interesting. And a really strong early game weapon, since Cowboy and Grunt side by side are very early game perks. The thing dragging it down really is the melee weapon requirement. It's either 30 or 45. Both of them are 45. Yeah, yikes. Sorry, I missed hatchets. I missed Margaret hatchets. Grunt is 45 guns, 20 explosives, and it's basically just grunt weapons, service rifles, assault carbines, marksman carbines, grenades, combat knives, Bowie knives, I think also get counted for this. No, I think Bowie knives do not, because they were introduced in different DLCs. I might be mistaken, though. And 45s are also affected by this, submachine guns and pistols. Light and Shining Darkness is one of the strongest weapons in the game for pistols, so this has like the relationship with like Light and Shining Darkness that Cowboy does with the Ranger Sequoia. Arguably, it's got a better requirement too, because I'd rather have 20 guns than 45 melee on a guns build, or explosives, than melee. And it also affects early game weapons like 9mm, stuff like that. So I would say overall it's the better one. I don't know what this is. I think this is Home on the Range. What the hell? Oh my god. This is level 6, right? No, we're at level 8. Home on the Range, Survival 70. Oh wow, you can sleep at campfires. Okay, we're back to perks I know. Living Anatomy. Requires a medicine skill of 70 and it shows you the target's DT and DR. No, DR has to be modded in. Shows you your target's DT and health. It's actually worthless. It's very cool as an optional. I think it should just be the default. The actual upside of the perk is that it gives you 5% damage to humans and non-feral ghouls. And it's mid. I really like taking this perk for the visual effect, but that's it. The damage will stack. So what? You do Bloody Mess, 15 with Black Widow, 35 with Professional, 55 with Grunt, and now 60 with Living Anatomy against a human. It does add to the chain, but it's kind of a strict skill requirement too. You really don't need 70 medicine for like anything else in the game, other than I think like healing Caesar. Not for anything substantial, I don't think. It matters a little bit for old world blues, I suppose. Pack rat. Pack rat. This perk is only up here because you can cheat it. This perk is up here on its own merits. It requires an intelligence of 5, a barter of 70, and what it does is it affects all items with a weight of 2 or less to be half as much. Now, that sounds worse than strong back. A lot of people try to say that strong back is better, but I mean, I can vouch for this. I've done builds where I had maxed out strength, and I had to manage my inventory more than builds that had lower strengths, but pack rat. You can carry a lot more than 50 extra pounds of gear on you with pack rat. It adds up very quickly. So unless you're going to wait until level 30 for burden to bear, just take pack rat. The only builds that can really dump pack rat are melee builds that don't carry any ammo. But even then, there are things in your inventory you carry that aren't ammo that are still affected by this, like crafting items are usually 2 or below, like sensor modules for auto inject stim packs. All of the ingredients of a weapon repair kit get halved by this. Empty syringes for stim packs get halved by this. Mut fruit and Nuka Cola. Leather belts for super stim packs are lowered by this. All 4 of the individual parts of doctor's bags, forceps, scalpel, surgical tubing, and like some other shit that I can't remember is lowered by this. All your sunset sass that you're going to use to heal in between battles is halved by this. Certain clothing you're going to wear might be halved by this, hilariously enough. Depending on the weapon you're using, your weapons get halved by this. Like, if you're going to be a melee character that falls back on thrown grenades, right? Most grenades are not 2 pounds, so that you can carry twice as many. And if you're doing guns, this basically circumnavigates... That's not the right word. Basically circumvents the weight restriction added in by ammo. What I think is also distinctly powerful about pack rat is that barter is not useful outside of this. Like, you don't need to raise barter for prices. But I still always raise barter just for this one perk. It's kind of like jury rigging in that respect. Like, you don't actually need to raise repair to repair items. You can repair your items to 100, but the perks are so powerful that you actually go out of your way to raise them just for this. And it's not one of those ones you'll just pick up eventually. This is something that's worth investing barter in immediately, even when you need it in other skills. It's a crazy powerful perk. It saves a lot of inventory time too. Quick draw needs an agility of 5 or 6, doesn't matter, and makes you draw your weapons faster. So it's like specifically more useful than Cannibal. Cannibal's too high. Rad resistance, flat rad resistance. With like a somewhat decent medicine skill, 1 rad X caps you out. There's also anti-rad gear in the game, which is all light armor. Power armor I think gives you rad resistance too. So like light armor for the build, heavy armor for the DT. Either way, you're getting resistance. Does it also have a strict requirement? Can you at least just take it for free? No. 25. Yeah, you gotta be fucking me. Yeah, that order. Scrounger is Fortune Finder, but for ammo. You can sell your ammo. So it's essentially Fortune Finder, but with tedium. But sometimes it helps you with ammo that you want, so it's slightly better. And this is Sneering Imperialist. I believe the description says that you don't take kindly to people who are just trying to stay alive in civilized lands. It's 15% damage bonus and accuracy and VATS against junkies, so I would assume things like the jackals and vipers, fiends, and Zion's white legs, as well as the dead horses and sorrows. So this does have a dialogue exchange where you tell Joshua Graham to put a cap in General Gobbledygook. So If you don't do the peaceful option, I guess pick this for a very silly line of dialogue. It's really weirdly useful in Zion. And if you try to rush Zion, the white legs are tough. They're tough. If you rush it before your character is strong, but once they've leveled up to the point where they have good weapons, the white legs can be pretty tough. And in that case, this is like slightly useful. More useful than those two. Stonewall prevents you from being knocked down in combat. I think it requires strength and endurance of 6. Oh, and 5 DT against melee attacks, which is cool. That's pretty good. Getting knocked down and stun locked will lose you a lot of battles, so. In the vanilla game where you don't have fatigue to worry about, that's very useful. Strong back is useful. It's just flat carry weight. It's like an alternative to Pack Rat if you're going to do a melee build, but honestly just take Pack Rat, even on a melee build. This is Super Slam. I believe it requires a melee and unarmed of 45. And effectively, it knocks enemies down. It ragdolls them. It's one of the craziest perks in the game. Super low level. Super minimal investment, all things considered. I want to make sure it's ore. Strength 6. Oh, just melee 45, yeah. It affects unarmed too. So earlier, right, I asked the question, is Demolition Expert as good for an explosives build as Professional is for a sneak build, right? And it's really not. Super Slam is probably the most lopsided perk for any build outside of maybe another that we're going to get to. I'd put it that high. It's crazy. Even if you don't plan on using them for damage, you can just switch to your fists and just knock someone down and ragdoll them. It's pretty nuts. Terrifying Presence just gives you a few speech checks where you get to tell someone to piss off. Put that like down here. I guess the advantage is that some of those confrontations are kind of tough. Like the 4 Brotherhood goons who attack you once you get done with Veronica's quest. So having them run away gives you the opportunity to initiate the fight, I guess. Like you can disappear and sneak attack them and snipe them, whereas normally you'd have to just firefight them, so. There's like one case where it's like tactically useful, but it's just for role-playing. Low-key, I think that they should all just be speech checks. But that's just me. Tribal Wisdom gives you the ability to eat mutated animals and insects in sneak mode. I don't know what the requirements are. That's basically just worse cannibal. Because it has more intense requirements. Wait, I might have my perks mixed up. Is that the one where it's bonus damage? Or are those rolled into one? Minus 50 limb damage, plus 25 to poison resistance. Huh. That's like okay. Yeah, that's the best out of these ones. And stay back is crazy. Shout out to Tractor Jack. Look at this shit. This shit's nuts. It's just like, it's cheating. It's literally just cheating. But it's fun. At least with Super Slam, you gotta get in melee range, so there's an element of risk to it. But with a riot shotgun, you can literally just fucking unload on someone from like a million miles away. Face no repercussions. Animal Friend has a charisma requirement. We'll put it down here. Actually, yeah, both of these need to. Because they have charisma requirements. Fight the power. This has a lot of range. It's either one of the best perks that you'll get or one of the worst perks. It's plus 5, it's plus do 2 DT against anyone dressed in NCR, Legion, or Brotherhood armor, and you get plus 5 crit chance against them. If you do like an independent New Vegas where you piss off all 3 factions, it's like godly. Because you'll constantly be fighting them. Even against normal playthroughs that just fight Caesar, this is incredible. Helps with light armor characters that are stacking this with light touch because you're frail. It's not that significant, but it's rolled in. And hey, it stacks. Plus 5 here, plus 5 from finesse, plus 10 from luck, plus 5 from light touch. I mean, we're already at a 25%, 1 in 4. Get a high crit weapon, better criticals. Stack that with all these, you know? They're all small numbers, but they all add up. But I don't think there's a playthrough where you don't fight one of these factions. So I think we'll go all the way up here. Finesse, no requirements, plus 5 crit chance. It's just a free, hey, sometimes you'll do more damage for absolutely nothing. No requirements. Bring back old school finesse, by the way. I like the old school finesse idea better. You lower base damage, but more critical hit chance. I like that idea quite a bit. I believe the old school one is minus 25% damage, but 10% crit chance. So you do marginally more damage than normal a lot of the time. It's very fun. Here and Now has a very interesting property. It's bugged in vanilla. Here and Now has no requirements, and it immediately advances you to the next level. Now in Fallout 3, this is kind of worth it because you gain a perk every level. In New Vegas, this is not at all worth it, right? There's one case where maybe you're in like you're about to fight Hoover Dam, so you just take it anyways to get your next level. But there's a problem. It has a specific amount of XP calculated for all of the vanilla intervals. To go from level 1 to level 2 is like something like 200 experience, something really easy that you'll get in Goodsprings, right? But to go to level 30 to 31 is like, I believe, 5,000 experience, because the game escalates. But this perk has certain intervals set for each level, assuming you're playing under a certain set of conditions, right? So, let's say that you take Skilled, which is one of the best traits in the game, right? Well, you're going to get 90% of the experience it gives you, so you won't level up. It's very silly. But it does happen. So yeah, if you take Skilled, Here and Now doesn't work. And even if it does work, and you go to the next level, at level 10, what are you getting? You're getting level 11. Okay? Like, and 10 skill points, 15 skill points. But you could have had Finesse, you could have had Bloody Mess, you could have had Travel Light, you could have had Pack Rat, could have had And Stay Back. Sorry, I forgot to mention And Stay Back has a guns requirement of 70. You might not get it when you're level 8, but it's useful whenever you get it. You could have fucking Demolition Expert, you could be gay, you could be straight, you could be bisexual. You could eat people. What are you doing? This is one of those perks that weirdly enough loops around from being absolutely fucking horrible in the base game to being like okay because the DLC exists. But funny enough, the DLC introducing Skilled is the one reason this doesn't work even with the DLC installed. To get here now to level you up, you would have to take Swift Learner to counteract Skilled. So you have to waste one perk on experience and then another on a level. That's 2 of your 5 perks at level 10. I mean, look at this. These are some bangers already. And you're throwing those away for a level? Now, personally, if you play with mods that enable every level, this is obviously a no-brainer. If you get too heavy into modding, you'll probably mess up the XP formula enough that this doesn't level you up, but it's close enough. And yeah, if you get a perk every level, you just want to go. You just want to get there. So wasting a few perks if you have perk every level enabled is absolutely worth it. But in vanilla, this is really bad. Marginally more useful than the charisma perks. Oh, I forgot to mention Terrifying Presence has a speech requirement of 70. No charisma requirement for the intimidation perk. Math Wrath has a science requirement of 70, and it reduces your action point cost by 10%. What does that actually translate to? I have taken this perk and then used VATS, and I didn't gain any actions. And on the same character, I reloaded when I got the level, and I took Action Girl, and I had an extra action. So it seems to have a smaller impact on VATS than at 1 rank of Action Girl. That's how it feels. But obviously you can stack them, so... Where are the accuracy perks? It's not that high. It's too strict of a requirement for such a marginal benefit. This is one of those ones I would only take if you're doing like a an all-American Little Devil type build, Light and Shiny Darkness, where you're trying to stack as many VAT shots as possible. Misfortune. So Mysterious Stranger is a VATS ability, and it has a chance to instantly kill your opponent. The problem is it's extraordinarily buggy in vanilla. There's a good chance that you'll get stuck in the cam, and then your enemy will kill you because you can't move. There's a chance that the animation might trigger, but it'll get stuck in the floor, and then you can't move, and you'll die, and you'll get stuck. There's a chance that he'll kill the enemy, but then you'll get stuck in the kill cam forever. And of course, there's a chance that he doesn't show up. So this is going to go in Bugsidian, but it is better, because it does have a practical effect, and Misfortune is the same, but buggier, and less lethal. So, yeah. Really unfortunate, too. I adore the sting and the idea. They finally got it to work enough that I actually choose it in Fallout 4. But not in New Vegas. Bugsidian does it again. Mr. Sandman. Manned me a sand. Make him the cheekiest that I've ever slammed. What's a sneak 60? XP from killing someone in their sleep. Or use a melee weapon. Aha! Use Swift Learner at level 1, level 2, and a melee weapon. Boom. It's for roleplay. Where did I put Terrifying Presence? It's like better than that, because you get bonus experience. And there's more people that you can kill this way than... No, you don't get experience from Terrifying Presence, so you get bonus experience. It's better. Nerd Rage. It has a science requirement and I believe an intelligence requirement. It boosts your strength and DT when you get near death. Now, there's super meta builds you can do where you keep your HP and DT super low because of Hot-Blooded with radiation. No, I'm thinking of the Fallout 4 rad mod I have. You just keep your health low for Hot-Blooded, right? But Yeah, 20%. That's a lot of enemies that are just now one-shotting you. You can get pretty tanky, but 20% is pretty crazy. That It's not something you can abuse as much as it's a get out of jail free card. Now, if it just gave you 10 strength and your attributes stacked over 10, there's a use for it. You could use it to do some crazy damage builds, but no, this is bad. This is not good. I love the concept though, and I believe Fallout 4 handled it a lot better. I don't know. Night person. You gain 2 perception and 2 intelligence when it's night. Unlike Fallout 4, where those have active effects in determining how accurate you are in VATs and how much experience you're gaining, there aren't tangible upsides to perception and intelligence most of the time. These don't affect how much skill points you get when you level up. This doesn't affect VATs accuracy in vanilla. It's pretty bad. It does work indoors and outdoors, so that's like half the day you're affected, I guess. Cool. I guess perception and intelligence do have some of the more numerous amounts of dialogue checks, which is a potential upside. It's better than terrifying presence off that. But really, this is most useful, I think, for your skills, I guess. Making sure you heal a little bit more by like 4 points. Some lockpick skill that, hey, that's valid, I guess. But yeah, on hardcore mode, you don't want to be manipulating and waiting and wasting all your resources and all that just so that you can have 4 lockpick. I don't know. But maybe it's a skill issue, Maybe I'm not sick with the sauce. Maybe that's why I don't think Night Person is very good. If you're a night person, comment in the comments below. Plasma Spaz. This has an energy weapons requirement that I don't know the specific of, but it makes AP actions in VATs cost 20% less. Yeah, energy weapons 70. It's not that intensive. This also affects grenades, so that's cool. Plasma is worse than lasers. They don't stack with crits as well, and they're rarer. The options are slow. Enemies can actually evade them quite a bit, and they don't offer that much more power over lasers to be worth it. But it's good. I would say it's better than Demolition Expert for a plasma build. Alertness gives you +2 perception when you're not moving and you're crouched. Okay. So, I use a mod that makes it so that you have VATS accuracy for perception, like Fallout 4. That way I try to, raise it and invest more into it and all that. In that case, this is a really cool perk. This would be an awesome perk in Fallout 4, because VATS is still, so it basically gives you a VATS boost. And it would affect, it would be for sniper characters that you crouch down and wait, and then you aim. It's cool. But, yeah, I guess it helps with lockpicking. I can't take that seriously. Where did I put Night Person? Slightly better. You get it constantly, but it's less useful overall. Fast Metabolism is 20% healing bonus from stim packs. I believe this doesn't even have a requirement. If it does, I'd better make sure. No requirement. So this is just healing. You get more than enough stim packs, but what scenario would someone come up with to argue with me against saying this is bad? What's the exact scenario someone is saying here? Do stim packs weigh anything on hardcore? It's been so long since I've played completely vanilla. I know doctor's bags weigh something, which is why pack rat affects them. Another common pack rat W. I don't remember if stim packs weigh more, but dude, they weigh like, I think like a tenth of a pound. Like a 15th or a 20th of a pound. You can carry a few of them. There's no scenario where this is ever worth it as a perk. Not at level 12. This is like a level 2 perk, or like it needs to be made into a trait. It used to be a trait, which I liked. So yeah, the top of these. This is the Ghoul and Super Mutant equivalent of the Bug perk. It's worse than them because it has a higher level requirement, it has more intensive requirements, and it affects much less types of enemies. Heavyweight requires a strength of 7, and it will half the weight of any weapon that weighs more than 10 pounds. Which is pretty good. This is not altogether useful. Because how many weapons are you carrying like that, right? But if you're a hoarder and you pick up every weapon you see, this does have some potential. I would put it probably about here. It's convenient. Interestingly enough, I believe there's a weapon that actually gets fucked over by this. For 20. Wait, 13. There's a weapon that actually drops below the threshold for heavyweight. Yeah, this does not affect weapons modded. So I'm sure if we go here, I want to know. I know this is a case, I just can't remember. I believe it might be the chainsaw that can be modded to under 10 pounds, which actually makes this perk worth less. It's a very silly interaction. This is hit the deck. It has a high explosives requirement, but it lowers the amount of damage you take from explosives. It gives you 25 DT. Now, that's not like the best, because explosives tend to do like the hundreds, so minus 25 isn't saving you. But if you get caught in some of the outer splash, this can save your life. And the fact that it affects your own explosives is really important too. It means you can get away with like firing a grenade rifle closer without dying. I'm going to put it right next to Stonewall. It's one of those things that's useful for all builds. But specifically, it is very useful for an explosives build, but it's less useful in general because it has an explosives requirement. This is something I think more characters would take if it didn't have the explosives requirement. Hobbler is only useful for a VATS explosive build. You do too much damage in vanilla. There's no point to cripple enemy limbs. I tried playing with legendary difficulty enabled off Jay Sawyer, and it made all the enemies beefcakes. It made it feel like Fallout 3 or Fallout 4, where every enemy is just a health sponge, right? And in that case, it actually did become important to cripple things like legs, like when I fought Deathclaws. Even when I was relying on, like, 4 companions that were all juiced up in, like, Gauss rifles and stuff, we couldn't quickly kill Deathclaws, so I had to cripple their legs so that when they limped over, we could all unload all of our rounds on it before it got to us. That's very cool. Right, so that experience I had with the mod was incredible because of Hobbler. But, like, in vanilla, what enemy are you fighting that you can't just kill? I don't think this affects Cazador wings. Cazador wings are like the only thing in vanilla where you might fight them at a point in the game where you're not strong enough to mow through them. But a lot of these perks are fine-tuned so that you might accidentally take them at an exact moment that you're about to be strong enough to just barely beat them. But if you just play the intended path and you go up, around, and down, and up, you're strong enough because of your levels. And if you rush Vegas, you know what you're doing, you don't need it. It's just kind of weird. I don't really understand it very much. But for explosives, this is good because targeting the feet will hit closer to where they're standing, which is better than trying to aim for their head or torso. The only problem with Hobbler really is that it has a perception requirement of 7, higher than most of the good perception perks, and you don't really want to invest in perception for base stats if you can avoid it. But explosives build can dump luck, so I guess you're fine. I'd say for an explosives build, it's more useful than Mathra is for general builds. Pretty good. Life Giver gives you 30 points of health. Better than this. It's essentially a point of endurance. You're probably going to have juiced up endurance in vanilla, so it's not that useful. It's only, actually, compared to all of these that are more situational and conditional, Life Giver, retention needs to be a lot lower. Retention, okay, Rad Resistance and Life Giver actually do have a hidden application. Girl, get you a lawn chair. So, Hot Blooded gives you bonus damage when your health drops below half. So, the benefit of Life Giver is that it's more so that it gives you 15 extra health if you're doing that, right? Because it'll raise your max health at half health. And if your health is halved, every point becomes more important. So there is that utility of it, but that's an incredibly weirdly specific min-maxed build that you absolutely don't need to do. That's for like trying to use like a weapon like the 10 mil the entire game. That's not because you're trying to, I guess we're trying to one-shot every enemy instead of just shoot them twice. But yeah, there is that niche application. And I forgot to give Rad Resistance its due, because if you do Atomic, you will have higher levels of radiation by default. So you don't want to get rid of all that when you go into an irradiated area, which are generally filled with tough enemies, you know? Like the giant rad scorps in Searchlight and the glowing ghouls in 34 and the reavers in the Mesquite Mountains. Are those the only irradiated areas? Man, there was not a lot of radiation in this game. Oh, the test site. The test site is pretty irradiated. There's a lot of ghouls there. Life Giver's better. Long haul lets you fast travel over encumbered. This should never ever be an issue for you. This is a convenience perk. Like, no one is ever making the argument this is actually like powerful, that it'll change how you play. It's just convenience, right? It speeds up a process. Personally, I think it should just be stacked onto Pack Rat or Strongback, but it is certainly convenient. Well, I said Scrounger and Fortune Finder are convenience perks, right? This is better. Piercing Strike ignores, I believe, 15 DT with unarmed and melee weapons once you hit those requirements. Which I believe Piercing Strike is 70 in unarmed. Just want to make sure I'm not spreading misinformation. And yeah, you're just doing flat damage to a Deathclaw. That's pretty good. Melee weapons already do good enough damage, though. I'm trying to think about what this changes drastically. Like, it's one of those perks you obviously take if you're doing unarmed, but is it really that powerful? Probably not. Because, like, Ballistic Fists do over 100 anyways. This probably has more application, actually, if you want to use a weapon like Greased Lightning, which is going to do, like, less base damage. So. Put it like here, I guess. Pyromaniac has an explosives requirement of 50 and boost fire damage for weapons. This includes the incinerator, flamer, I believe incendiary grenades. I don't think it counts for incendiary ammo, and it counts for Gehenna, and it affects the crit damage on a superheated Saturnite fist. Gehenna's okay. You can go rush it and buy it at level 1. No, you can buy it at level 1. It's a little tough. You can, but you can't get this perk at level 1, so who cares? You can get the superheated Saturnite fist, which is very cool. It makes you feel like a Kainu from White Piece. From One Beard. One Piece. 2 chains, 1 piece. It they're fun weapons. They're not good though. None of the weapons this effects are good. Gehenna's not that crazy. Superheated Saturnite Fist is okay. It's not that great though. It's damage, yeah. But I think even with Pyromaniac, I think the superheated Saturnite Fist, I can't stand that name. Even with that, the Akainu Fist is just like weaker than like a Ballistic Fist, right? It's weaker than like a Mantis Gauntlet or Embrace of the Mantis King. It's weaker than, probably weaker than the Fist of the North Rower. Like, it's just not, it's not the best weapon with this. And if it's going to be such an investment for an unarmed build, you know, why would you invest all that? I don't know. This is, I think, robotics expert. Science 50, 25% damage for robots. This, if you're going to rush old world blues, is like invaluable. Makes you jacked as fuck in that DLC. It's like more useful than the Sneering Imperialist. The shutdown thing doesn't really matter. It's like cool to RP if you're doing a thief character or an assassin character. Silent running. It helps you sneak better. So, sneak is really weird to appraise. I low-key kind of view stealth as like the 6th combat style in this game at this point. Because in reality, yeah, you can pickpocket items, but what are you actually pickpocketing off of like an NPC? Like 10 caps? No. You can put live grenades on people, but that's going to turn everyone hostile. So are you going to... I guess you can start the party, but at that point, just throw the fucking grenade and run, right? Sneak is pretty much entirely to determine combat, which is weird then because it doesn't stand on its own, but it's not really an out of combat thing either because there's no value to pickpocketing. I think outside of like Clandon and Kachino and Gamora. And like sometime, like you can get Sarah's room key with it if you can't pass the lockpick. But being able to pull off that pickpocket check is harder than the lockpick check. So sneak is really iffy out of combat. But if you view it as like a supplementary to combat, as like the 6th weapon skill, it gives some insane melee damage with sneak attacks, and it makes gunplay really overpowered, because you can stay hidden with suppressors. And then it pairs really well for like one really powerful shot with energy weapons, and the ability to get a few shots off with explosives before you're found is pretty cool. So silent running would affect your detection while you're moving, So in this case, I think we should value it based off a melee build. And melee stealth builds go crazy in damage. But actually put it above piercing strike. Sniper affects headshots. That's double damage if you hit it. Splash damage, I think doubles the radius of all explosives, including your own. Which I would say is actually just better than this. The point of explosives is that they cover a wide area, so making them cover a wider area is just better. Actually, whereas, yeah, it's better for an explosive build than Mad Bomber. This is Unstoppable Force. It requires a melee or unarmed skill of 90 and a strength of 6 or 7. It might actually be 8. The point is that it has insane requirements. So this weapon makes you do 4 times the damage if your opponent blocks. Which doesn't sound great because blocking reduces damage, but then you consider how high your numbers get. And you can get a ballistic fist to like 100. That's 400 damage. That's like an explosive, you know? I would say this is on par with piercing strike. Probably better. The only difference is that a lot of enemies just don't block. This only helps with melee fighters who are already kind of frail. So I'll put a right below it. Adamantium skeleton helps your limbs not get crippled. I mean, like, there's enough doctor's bags in vanilla. There's doctors everywhere. You can use this to counteract a small frame, or you can just, like, play. This is specifically useful if you're going to be, like, a melee fighter who's going to get crippled all the time. But even then, I don't know. You get pack rat and you can carry around more doctor's bags. This is useful, I guess, if you want to dump medicine, because your doctor's bags won't do as much if your medicine skill is very low. So this is specifically for melee characters who want to dump medicine. Also keep in mind that if you're playing with all 50 levels, or 30 levels with Logan's Loophole, with the DLCs enabled, that's enough skill points to raise like all your supplemental skills and like a combat skill or two. And 50 is enough for all skills. So there's no dumping a character unless you're role playing, right? Don't care. Center of mass. You do 15% damage, bonus damage, when you aim for the torso. This is just worse than sniper. It's easier to hit a torso, but the sniper bonus compensates for that. And then if you hit the head, that's double damage instead of plus 15, so it's just better. The case for this, I guess, is like shotguns, where no, there's no case for this. If it was for outside of VATS, it'd be different. But as a VATS perk goes, it's like probably the worst VATS perk in the game. Where's Mathrath? Goes below it. Yeah. Chemist. This makes all your chems last 50% longer. I believe this also includes healing items of all types and food, so that's interesting. You never run out of chems, and this is too late level for rushing the strip and using chems in your early build. So yeah, this perk is effectively worthless, but the impact is kind of useful for things like rarer items for preserving them, and Chemist is most notably useful for Turbo, since Turbo is very hard to extend. It's very rare, and it's very difficult to actually craft the item. To get Turbo, you'll either need to find it in set locations, buy it off of certain people who can restock it, or which is RNG based, or you'll need to craft it, which means that you have to go do a great conquest, have a science or survival skill of like 50, and then you need to get Cazador wings, turpentine, Brock flowers, and jet, which can be kind of annoying to do. But yeah, Chemist is useful if you want to use Turbo early. Jury Rigging is the most powerful. It might be the most powerful perk in the game. Where did it go? So, like, Pack Rat just speeds up the game, right? It's effectively a convenience perk. But Jury Rigging is actually game warping. You need 90 repair, and what it allows you to do is repair an item with a similar model. So if you have a knife and a combat knife, you can use them for each other. If you have a varmint rifle, which is lever action, or a anti-material rifle, which is lever action, you can repair each other with them. If you have like any type of plasma shooting rifle, you can generally repair them together. Like if you have like the MF Hyperbreeder, you can repair it with like a plasma pistol or a laser pistol. The ranges on it are crazy. Armor is divided up into light, medium, and heavy. So like you can repair Joshua Graham's armor with like a vault suit. You can repair your like reinforced combat armor Mark II with like normal combat armor. You can repair power armor with metal armor. You know, so on and so on. This doesn't sound that powerful, but then you think about it and you use it, and effectively, like, what if you carry around, like, and you find, like, 10 tire irons, and you have, like, 3 switchblades? That's, like, what, 30 pounds of irons that you can repair into 100% condition switchblades that weigh a pound. I think, like, under a pound with jury rigging, right? And then wait until you come across something like a Ripper, repair it with one of the switchblades, that's like 1,000 caps. You know? Or if you're trying to carry around things to save, repair like sunglasses with all the random cowboy hats you'll find. It's weightless. This extends your item condition unless you're using like the hollow rifle that has like no counterpart. This extends your armor condition unless you're using like, I guess power armor. Power armor is still pretty rare to find fixes for. This breaks the economy. You can repair brush guns with like varmint rifles. You can repair like hunting shotguns with single shotguns. And it affects your weight balance because you can essentially manage your weight. Because even if you have like a bunch of hunting rifles, you can repair them with BB guns and wait until you come across brush guns and trail carbines, right? Because the BB guns only weigh a pound. Or 2 pounds, I think, one with Pack Rat. It's just this process that's insane. You effectively negate the need to use weapon repair kits. So, for most weapons, you can just do that. Now, this is only useful for common things, so something like a Gatling laser, for instance, doesn't necessarily get that buffed by jury rigging. But you can still repair it with like flamers and incinerators and plasma casters, which aren't like nowhere. It's still useful. But yeah, for like a pistol build or a rifle build, jury rigging is insane. For every other build, it's just essentially the economy is over. And for hoarder builds, it's weight management. Jury rigging is like the most powerful perk in the game. I'll call it tier 21. Light step is ass. Don't use it for dead money. You have a companion for it. Purifier, level 14, no requirements. Plus 50 bonus damage against most abominations. And I think super mutants and ghouls. So it's like spore monsters, death claws, night stalkers, super mutants, and I think ghouls. That is just flat damage. No requirements too. Hell yeah. Action Boy and Action Girl are just better than Mathrath. Oh, sorry. Requirement is agility of 6. 2 ranks. You can get 30. Better criticals. Requirements perception 6, luck 6. 50% bonus damage on a crit. Where's finesse? I guess Bloody Mess is better because it's all damage. This is Chem resistant, 50% less chance to get addicted. This is worse than Chemist. I'd rather my chems last longer if I get addicted more. They used to be opposite traits, I believe, in the older games. But yeah, this is just ass. I don't care for organizing. These perks, this is also like level 14. Like by this point, your character no longer has the early game excuse. Meltdown causes chain reactions. This is quite possibly one of the strongest perks in the game. It doesn't sound like it though. So, if you use energy weapons, your enemy dies in an explosion that is determined by the damage of the weapon you're using. So if you use something like the MF Hyperbreeder Alpha that does like no base damage but it does like DPS and crits, then yeah, it's not that good. But if you use something like a Gauss Rifle, this thing can actually just wipe out an entire room full of people. Jay Sawyer actually saw that this was so powerful that they nerfed it to, or I guess he nerfed it to just plasma weapons. Even that version of it is this high, by the way. This is insane. Elijah's Lair in the DLC is one of the strongest base damage weapons you can get in the entire game. And when you combine it with Meltdown, it goes fucking dummy hard. It actually goes fucking insane. Weapon handling is something that I've kind of grown fond of with mods, since a lot of mods make your weapon requirements more strict. But in vanilla, it's not all that useful, because you have enough special stats to throw around. But let's say that you're trying to like min-max for something else and you dump strength, but you decide you want to use an anti-material rifle. Just take this. It feels sort of like a convenience perk alongside the likes of Long Haul, where it's just if you decide to change your plan for a build mid-game, but you don't want to respec, you don't want to restart the game. The weapon requirements mostly just affect your manual aiming. They won't affect your VATs too harshly. And for the high weapon requirements, a lot of them are automatics and explosives, so it's not like it matters much. This is much more important for something like the anti-material rifle or Little Devil that are single shots, but they have like 8 strength requirements. It's more crazy for that. Tag is almost identical in function to weapon handling. It just compensates you by giving you 15 skill points in one skill, but it can't be one that you tagged at the start. It's effectively just a 10 intelligence level in one skill. That can be useful. It would be significantly more useful if it was early, but it's not. It is like level, what is this, level 16? My brother in Christ, what skill are you tagging at level 16? This is the science perk that lets you try to hack another terminal. This is actually worthless. When you go into a terminal and you're at one guess left, hit B and it resets the terminal. You can argue over whether that's an exploit or intended, but that's how it works. Concentrated fire. Is the best accuracy perk in the game. Has a skill requirement of energy weapons and guns to be 60, which is pretty steep, but entirely worth it. It essentially means that on every queued shot on an enemy, the chance to hit increases by 5%. This is not Fallout 4 concentrated fire, where you actually need to land the shot for the increase to happen. The increase is sequential whether you hit or not. If you take a weapon like All American and you use like let's take a modded example, right? Where you can fire from like literally infinite distance, right? but you have like 1% chance to hit. You could queue up like 10 shots and get to 50%. And with the All-American, you can get to like, what, 14 shots? That's enough to almost guarantee you're hitting, even at initially 1% odds. In vanilla, where you have to be kind of close to that someone in general, for a lot of weapons, concentrated fire guarantees you hits. And you're in VATS, which means that it's higher crit chance too, which means that it's bonus crit damage too. Concentrated fire is really good. Concentrated fire is also really useful for trying to cripple something, like a wing of a Cazador or something. This is the lockpick one, but it's more useful because if you force a lock, it can break, I guess. Paralyzing Palm paralyzes enemies with melee attacks and has an unarmed requirement of 70. However, apparently it actually works through weapons. You don't actually have to be using your bare fists, which makes it like a worse version of these two, because it's just a paralyzing attack that just shuts down your enemy. Walker Instinct. While you're outside, you have a perception and agility bonus of 1. It's better than alertness because it gives you agility bonus, which gives you AP. You could also use this as a pseudo solution to Hot-Blooded. Hot-Blooded drops your perception and agility by 2. So if you were to use this in conjunction with Hot-Blooded, you would only be at -1, and you could compensate for that with headgear and riot gear. So it has that utility, but overall it's a very bad perk. This is Atomic, the perk I already went over, and it's going right next to Radchild. They duo insanely well. Only downside is that it takes like forever to get this one online, super high level. Has an endurance requirement of 6. Explorer has no requirements, and it marks every location on the map. Super based, but obviously it's useless because it won't discover them. It just tells you where they are, so you still have to find them to fast travel. Eye for an Eye is an interesting one because I've been harping that all of the damage adds up over the entire video, like repeatedly. And Eye for an Eye gives you 10% damage for every crippled limb, which means that you can get 50% bonus damage. So, actually I think 60, right? Yeah, 60. So why would I say this isn't worth it? Well, your accuracy, your chance to hit, is determined by your arms. So if you cripple those, I mean, you're fucked in VATS, and your weapon sway is going to be awful. You can cripple your torso, but you're going to get stun locked by every enemy with a gun because of how stunning mechanics work in this game. You can cripple your legs and move even slower than vanilla. Or you can cripple your head and get screen aids with the migraines that happen. It's not worth it. It's not worth it ever. I think there's like a world where one-handed weapons only need your right arm for accuracy, so you cripple your left arm and leave it. But that's so specific, and I'm 100% sure that's not how it works. Because I've installed mods that affect how crippled limbs affect your accuracy, and both arms factor into it no matter the type of weapon. So, it's not even like just your hip fire is fine, like, your accuracy is just nerfed immensely from this. The use of this seems more so to be for explosives and unarmed melee. But, yeah, good luck reaching an enemy with melee if you're crippled. Not getting stun locked if it's your chest. And if you're explosives, aiming with broken arms is not a good idea. Eye for an Eye, a lot less than a perk, feels like a trait. I think if it was tuned a little differently, it would be a little interesting. It would need to be much more substantially beneficial to be worth all those downsides. Grim Reaper Sprint, 20 AP for every kill in VATS. This can keep you in VATS forever. Combined with something like the All-American, this is enough to just stay in VATS for an entire entire battle. It's less important than concentrated fire, though. In their shoes, it comes too late and it gives you marginal bonuses. When you consume Night Stalker squeeze-ins, you get a sneak bonus, a perception bonus, and poison resistance. Okay. What are you doing with those? You know? Like, in vanilla, what are you doing with this? This is also like level 18. Now this is level 20. What are you doing with this? What is this accomplishing? What are you doing? Why are you running? There's no world where you use it. Ninja is bugged. It has a sneak and melee weapons requirement of 80. And it affects your sneak crit damage with melee weapons by 25% and gives you a bonus crit chance with all melee weapons by 15%. However, it's bugged and it only gives you a 1.5 crit chance increase, which in my opinion is completely fine. That's actually still worth taking, and boosting your crit damage with sneak is insane. I would honestly say this has a bigger impact on a melee build than the professional does. The only problem is that it comes much later. Realistically, I think almost all the perks at level 20 or higher should have their level requirement halved. Because it's just so common that all these perks that actually do have beneficial engagements in your build just come too late. You're too naturally jacked for this to seem as substantial compared to you being weaker at like level 8 or 10 with the professional. Solar power gives you strength and endurance while outside. It has a required endurance of 7. Yeah, if you want to do an all-round build, this has some utility for like giving you some melee damage outside, I guess. You regenerate health in the sunlight, which is cool. Stack that with Rad Child, and it's extremely powerful. But unlike Rad Child, you have to be outside. Some pretty tough areas are indoors too, like the Brotherhood Bunker. This is Them's Good Eatin'. Killed living creatures that aren't human have a chance to drop, I think, Blood Sausage and Red Paste, which are incredible healing items that sell for a lot. But I believe it has a strict requirement, and it's like level 22. Survival 55. That's not that bad. It's like slightly worse than fast metabolism. This is Irradiated Beauty, I think. I have to look at some of these DLC perks. They're bad. Sweep removes all rads. That would be this one. That's Voracious Reader. So yeah, that is Irradiated Beauty. Sleep removes all rads. I mean, you completely negate rads as a challenge, right? Except for when you're in irradiated areas, which is where they're a challenge. Trying to come up with an argument for this. I would put it about here. This is Laser Commander. It has an energy weapons requirement of 90, and it boosts all laser damage and crit chance. Lasers are some of the best weapons in the game for criticals. I'd put it better than Meltdown. This is Nuka Chemist. You can create custom Nuka-Cola items. Items of Nuka-Cola origin. What do you do with this? You can create Nuka-Cola victories and then turn those into atomic cocktails. At level 22. No, it's bad. We need to create a tier. We need to create a tier. Whoa! Get that out of there. Because there's no fair way to analyze these. Like, if we're being real, you know? There's no context we can analyze these in other than that they come too late. You've got all of these rows of amazing perks to choose from. You're never going to choose Explorer at level 20. Maybe you choose it at level 2. You know, maybe if it had like an upside. Same with this one. It converts books into... You can create magazines with Blink books. First of all, you actually have to go to Old World Blues to activate Blink books, to get them from books for the shoot. And then what magazines are you creating? I guess your critical hit magazine. So if you took comprehension, this is worth it for 10% crits. I mean, like, you need like comprehension and retention though, because that's an active use magazine. You need like 2 other perks and a DLC to make this like sort of cool. You know, it's crazy. Spray and Pray lets you hurt your enemy, your companions, do less damage. This one's actually a good companion perk if you use explosives. Put it like next to Demolition Expert. Slayer boosts all of your unarmed and melee attacks by 20% speed. Has an unarmed requirement of 90 and an agility requirement of 70. Yeah, this is an insane perk. Lessons learned. So boys, I think lessons learned is low-key kind of based. Low-key. It's low-key kind of based. Try not to spit roast me alive. Look, Your Honor. Lessons learned. Yeah, it's just experience. You can get that by playing the game. But if you don't like the DLCs, you know, like I don't really care for the DLCs unless you're doing them on their own. There's not enough experience to get to level 50 in the Mojave. You'd have to farm, right? So you don't have any problem getting to level 26, right? But you do have a problem getting from 26 to 50. So it's sort of weird. You'd think this perk would be better at level 2 and then just get 1 more experience per every level, and it would. But it's perfectly fine for where it is. It's actually decently strong. And you'll probably get an extra level or 2 out of it, just like with Swift Learner. I believe the only downside is it has a high intelligence requirement. That's not that bad of a downside. And you just get more and more experience as you level up. It makes it to the point to where you'll get like 40% bonus experience at level 40. It means that if you want to get to max level outside of the DLC, it's actually possible. But that is not necessary. I would put it like next to Eye for an Eye. I just don't think it's worthless, like I think a lot of people would say. I'm surprised you put weapon handling in bad. It's actually useful if you want to fulfill requirements for the AMR. That was the exact example I brought up. Get the +2 from Old World Blues, then weapon handling for 8 strength and 8 requirement. I don't quite remember what I said. That was a bit ago. But essentially it's just too late. And you have enough stat points in Vanilla New Vegas. I did say with the caveat that if you do a modded playthrough where your special stats matter, that weapon handling becomes like a topper, like a best or second best skill. But in vanilla, it's convenience. You can always dump charisma. And with all your implants, you're at +6 for everything else, and then you have 5 points to spend. There's no scenario where you shouldn't be good enough for your build. But I suppose, you know what? It's got a lot more application for like a first-time player who doesn't understand how to build their character. I'll put it higher, but yeah, Swift Learner. I'll put it like there. It's a good new player perk. It's got that value. I guess Explorer also has some new player value. I remember last time I made a big deal and I called Explorer like ultra based and put it in its own tier. You remember when Explorer was the final perk you could was the final perk you got in Fallout 3? Am I remembering that right? It was because level 20 was the cap, right? And you got it at 20. Can you imagine doing your entire Fallout 3 run and then getting Explorer at the very end? I guess I'm just used to dumping Charisma, then putting everything into Luck, maybe one into Agility. I mean, yeah. I would raise Luck too. Yeah, I guess if you're going more specific, you're going to raise like Intelligence and Agility and Luck. Maybe you don't have as much Strength. I don't know, there's a lot of ways to get around weapon strength requirements in vanilla. It's only if you can't dump one stat that it becomes a real issue. Nerves of Steel regenerates action points insanely fast. Agility 7. This is crazy. It's crazy quick. I don't have a quantification for it, but it'll definitely win you battles. Again, the issue is just that it's insanely high level requirement, so it's not actually as impactful. Where did I put the other VATS perks? It's more useful than Center of Mass for sure. Tunnel Runner has an agility requirement of 8, I believe, and it makes you sneak faster when you're crouching. Yeah, agility 8, 25 sneaking speed when wearing light or no armor. It's convenient, I guess. I guess you have to stay in sneak mode to actually score your crits. I'm a little spoiled by sneak crits when standing as a mod in Stewie Tweaks, but I suppose in vanilla you would stay sneaked for extended periods of time, so this would be convenient. And at level 28 you can just waste perks. I put it up here. It's a travel light. In vanilla at least. This is Rad Absorption, I believe. No, we already did Rad Absorption. No, that was a Radiated Beauty. This one is Rad Absorption, which I believe has an endurance of 8 and slowly loses you rads over time. Endurance 7. That's pretty useful. So convenience perk. I would put it at like less useful than Rad Resistance. Because Rad Resistance factors into like your super weird gimmicky atomic radiated build. Whereas this one would actively harm it. Believe it or not, Radchild and Atomic are so powerful that one mod balance I saw was someone actually merged Radchild and Rad Absorption so that it was a stat that you were constantly trying to maintain as high. Which is hilarious. This is Home on the Range. I believe you get the benefits of being well rested when you sleep anywhere. Level 20 plus. Burden to Bear is Strong Back. So where did I put Strong Back? It has a slightly higher endurance requirement and strength requirement of I think 6 instead of 5. So many little vault people. There it is. You don't have it for as long. It's not as useful by that point in the game. Especially considering level 30, you can stop worrying about money. Like you can literally just stop picking things up to sell them. I have really bad. I can't really stop myself from doing it because it's like ingrained into me. But there's a point in New Vegas where you can just stop picking things up because you don't need to anymore. Implant GRX has an endurance requirement of 8, so it's not top tier, but it's pretty insane. It basically just gives you Sandevastan abilities. You can just turbo mode whenever you want. It's got 2 ranks. You can get even more in the second rank. And you can literally just fucking enter speedster mode. It's so crazy. It's not addictive too. I do believe Implant GRX can be boosted by Fast Times and Day Tripper, as well as Chemist. And you can stack all of your doses that you get daily all at once. And it's crazy. In the past, I've trash talked this, but it is very powerful. It's very cool. Really, the biggest problem is that it's so fucking late into the game. I don't want to get this at level 30. You know, I don't care about that point. Broad Daylight, it lets you sneak with your Pip-Boy light on. It's like level 30, 36. Certified Tech. I want to look up the requirements. No, I don't care. I know the effect. It's critical hit chance on robots. So where did I put robotics expert? It's worse robotics expert. And then finally, all of the karma perks are almost completely free in game warping. You become immune to critical hits, and each one has an individual effect. This one is, I believe, Thought You Died? No. Thought You Died was this one, because it has a grave. You get 10% bonus damage, immunity to crits, and you get 10 health per every 10 points of karma, which I think caps out at 250. That's pretty substantial, but it's level 50. And then Just Lucky I'm Alive gives you 50% crit damage, immunity to crits, and when you exit a battle, you get bonus luck. Ain't Like That Now gives you immunity to crits and attack speed. So it's not altogether that useful. I'd say the other two are better, but it's still useful. I like to play with Jay Sawyer and Lonesome Red perks at 30, so I can pick 2 or 3 of them. And like, yeah, these are all perks that you should get if they were available, but you're not going to get them until level 50. And if your character is level 50 in vanilla, you don't need them. I do think in general, if every perk in the game had its level requirement halved after 10, the game would have a better balance. Some of these perks are just way too late. Let's go through and look at what we did. Speed perks, knockdown perks, damage perks, better crits, finesse, laser commander, yeah, the Rad Child atomic build. This is a pretty solid S tier. Any additions, like anything that I used to underestimate that I've come to respect. Implant GRX, Rad Child, Atomic. I'd say Intense Training. Yeah, because like if you want to do your weapon handling thing, you can always just do 1 rank of Intense Training. It's not as much for your weapon requirement, but it also gives you melee damage and carry weight. And it might let you pass the speech check. Handloader's insane. Professional, ninja, fight the power, concentrated fire, shotgun surgeon. You know, relative to how good, because it pairs with this, right? I think it has to be higher. Rapid reload, silent running, purifier, piercing strike, unstoppable force. I think I overestimated Stonewall last time that I did this for sure. Stonewall just doesn't really you're not gonna meet the requirements for it and take it if you're not a melee character, which I think is kind of the. I think I overestimated it. And then for mid perks, yeah, these have like new player use. All right, I think I'll cut out that pause that I had to go for, and then cut out this long intro, and then I'll probably upload this. But I'm gonna go take a break, and I think I'll be back in